Hi everyone, I'm Naif Amudi, and the topic I have selected for the presentation is server side programming. So, in this presentation, I'll provide a overview of what server side programming is all about, and I will also demonstrate it using a demo application that uses server side programming. So the first question is what is the difference between server side and client side in web development. So in this slide I have highlighted a few of the differences. On the table's left hand side you will see things related to server side programming, whereas on the other side you have things related to client side programming. So the first thing about server side programming is that everything server side is processed on the server on which the site or app is hosted on, whereas in client side the code is processed by the visitor's browser. Okay. Technologies related to server side development. Some examples of programming languages that are used for server side programming include PHP, Python, Java, among various others. Then you have technologies such as web servers and database servers, which are deployed on the server side. On the opposite end, where you have client side, some of the technologies that are used, which we have learned during this semester as well as in the previous semester. These include HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. One thing I want to mention with regards to JavaScript is that JavaScript is actually because it is a general purpose programming language. There are implementations of JavaScript that can even be used on the server side. One famous example of such an implementation would be Node.js. Alright, so finally, one of the most important things is that server side code is never visible to the visitor, whereas client side code is visible to the visitor. We have already seen this during this semester many times when we inspect our page or we view the source of the page. So everything from the HTML, the CSS, and JavaScript, it is all visible to us, and for that reason it would be visible to anyone who visits the website. Okay, so here's a diagram of sorts which basically shows how these two technologies work together. So what happens is that a client in this case may be a web browser. What the web browser does is that using the HTTP protocol, it sends a request to the server. Our web browser makes a request to the server. The server receives the request, it processes the request, and it sends it back to the client, which in our case is the browser. Many things may happen on the server before the response is sent to the browser, the server will first inspect the request, and then it will act upon it accordingly. Like for example, if the request is to a PHP file on the server, then the web server is responsible for executing that file, fetching the response from that execution, and then returning it back as a response to the client. So basically this is how these two work together. Now what is server-side programming used for? Okay, so it is used for storing and retrieving data to and from a central source. For example, you may have a MySQL database on a server which stores a list of products. You would then use a server-side programming language such as PHP to store and retrieve the data that is stored in this database. The things that can be performed on this database using a PHP script includes creating, reading, updating, and deleting the data. Client-side languages are actually used for sending and receiving data to and from the server. So for example, we may have a PHP script that returns a list of products. These scripts process the products and outputs everything using HTML. Once the browser receives this HTML, it will render it, and we may have another PHP script that is responsible for handling updates to these products, in which case on the client side we will be having a HTML form which would be used for submitting the modified data to the script. And once the script receives this request via the through the web server, it will do what it needs to do. Alright, so we just covered what server-side programming can do. So we will quickly look at things that server-side technologies and programming languages cannot do. They cannot be used to access data on a visitor's computer. Only exception would be things like cookies and some other user information. But other than that, server-side languages cannot access anything else. For them to be able to access data that is stored on a visitor's computer, a client-side language, a client-side technology rather, would need to be used for this. For example, you could have a form with a image field. The user can select image through that field and submit the form. So what the browser would do is that it would take the image and it would send it to the web server, and in turn the web server will forward it to the programming language that is responsible for processing the form submission. Alright, so for the demo that I have created, we'll be using three technologies. Apache would be the web server that we will be using, and MySQL would be the database server that we will be using, and the programming language that we'll be using in this demo would be PHP. So basically, the demo is a CRUD application. CRUD stands for create, read, update, delete. So this application is going to help us manage a list of products which are going to be stored in a MySQL database. The application would render all of these products. It will also be used for creating new products, deleting existing products from to and from the database. So the first thing I'll do is show you a demo of the application itself before we look into the backend code that powers this application. So right now you have a screen where you have the following heading. Below that you have a message which says that no products found. So what the script is currently doing is that it is making a connection to the database, and it is getting a list of products. Right now there are no products in the database, hence it is showing the following message over here. This is an application using which you can access the MySQL database. This database has a table named products. Currently it has no products, that is why it says 0 over here. We can confirm that indeed there are no rows in this table by clicking on the browse button, and as you can see it says over here MySQL return an empty result set, which means that this table is empty. We'll go ahead and add a sample product. When we click the add product button, the form will be sent to a script on the server. I'm using a local server over here. So basically the contents of this form will be posted to a PHP script named index.php using the post method. As we learnt during this course, there are two methods that we can use to post data. One is the post method and the other is the get method. We'll be using the post method to create products. Now when I click on add product, the product will get added. Alright, product created successfully. We just need to refresh it and we see the product over here. We can confirm this by refreshing this, and you will see that indeed the product has been added to the database, and our script can be used to fetch these products. Now I'm going to add another product to the products table. Now that I have refreshed it, I can see that the second product has also been added to the database. If I wanted to, I can click on this button and it would delete this item from the database. And the product has been deleted. I just need to refresh it and we can see that it is gone. You can see that in the URL I actually am using the get method. You have two variables, fields, or one is named action, the other is named ID. Now if we delete this as well, you'll see that the table will now be empty. So here's the actual code of the application. This is the main file. It basically displays the header section and the footer section. On top we are loading a PHP file. Everything else is standard HTML, and over here you have I'm loading a CSS file, and over here I'm loading a JavaScript file, and over here I'm calling a PHP function named doRequest, which is actually defined in the application.php file. I'm going to be after I finish the presentation, I will upload this demo to my GitHub repository and share the link so that you can download it and have a look. So basically this file has a number of functions defined. Over here I define a function named getConnection, which basically opens a MySQL connection and returns the connection to the caller. Then you have a function named getProduct, which gets a single product from the database based on the ID of the product. Then you have a function getProducts all, which basically gets the list of all the products in the database. Then you have a display all products function. What this does is this is the function which actually gets all of the products and then renders them as HTML. It does so over here. As you can see, this is basically standard HTML. This is where it loops over all of the products that it has retrieved from the database and outputs them into table data element. Finally, you have functions for deleting the products, creating new products, and then this is the main function which determines the action what the user is trying to do. For example, if the user just wants to see the list of all the products, or if whether the user wants to add a new product or delete an existing product. One change I'm going to make is that I'm going to move this over here so that as soon as I add a product it will be displayed immediately rather than having me to refresh the page. This parameter is actually being used. We'll leave it as it is. Alright, I'll go ahead and add a product, a bunch of when I click add product, it should immediately display the product inside the table. Alright, now when I click delete, it will delete the product again, and it will remove it from the table as well, without having for me to refresh the page. Alright everyone, I guess that is all for my all I have for this presentation. If you have any questions, then please feel free to ask, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Bye bye.